Hi guys, welcome back. So let's talk British and Irish Lions. We had a tour this year. It's been in very unusual circumstances, so I'm not really going to slate that tour particularly, but it certainly raised questions about what we should do going forward. Assuming you guys want British and Irish Lions tours in the future, or let me know if you think they're outdated and they should be scrapped. But as you guys know, I'm a bit of a sucker for the format. I love the idea of getting four nations together who don't normally play together, going to one of those Southern Hemisphere powerhouses and having a test match series. And the test matches are always high-intent stuff. That certainly isn't a problem. There's been wins, losses and draws for the Lions, so I think there's a good spread. And it's still very popular with the fans. It makes stacks of cash, and it is still very special for the players. So for me, I think it absolutely stays, but it's worth discussing, should it change? And I want to know in the comments below what you guys would have as your perfect tour. So there's some of the stats we'll talk about in a minute, and these are some of the areas I think maybe need to be in the discussion. So first up, entertainment. Now, here's a question. Now, Warren Gatland decided to play a rather boring form of rugby because that's the one he felt was going to win the best in South Africa. Now, it was not the case in the end, but should maybe they actually consider maybe having entertainment as actually built into the contract for the coach? Now, you may say, well, that's not on. A coach should be allowed to win however they think is best, but no, that's not actually the case. Say, take the Barbarians, for example. The coach gets very much instructed, this is how we want the Barbarians to play. We want them to run ball in hand, do really cool stuff, have entertaining matches, that sort of thing. Now, could something, maybe not that extreme, be brought into the Lions to say we need entertaining, attacking, running rugby to some degree? Let me know if you think that's a good idea or if that's just a no-go, and if you do that sort of thing, you might as well scrap the whole thing. But I think entertainment-wise, from the Lions' perspective, was a problem this year. Should we address it or just leave it alone? Secondly, quality. So not the test match quality, because that is always high. This non-test, this touring match quality. Now, in South Africa, the touring match quality was very poor, but then, say, in New Zealand, it was excellent, and it's been a mixed bag on and off. Should they draw into the contract some minimum standard of non-test match quality, the selection that sides need to put out? And indeed, to address that, for Australia, there has definitely been talk of trying to get international sides involved in those non-test games, like Fiji, to try and bump up the interest. Or do you think that's a definite no-go again? You should leave coaches to do whatever they want. And if you have international sides playing, then that defeats the point of touring the country. So that's an interesting one. Quality, should you have safeguards in place, or should you just let the domestic sides do whatever they want? In with the number of matches comes this idea of, do you have matches in between the test matches? These kind of midweek games in and amongst the test fixtures. I mean, certainly this time round they decided not to do that, but then if you don't do that, maybe the players who aren't selected lose sharpness. But if you do that, sometimes you have to play test players, say on the bench or even starting, that you really don't want to happen. Or even worse, the coach feels they're forced to call up even more players. Let's not mention the Geography 6 in New Zealand. So should we just leave those midweek games out of the test series, or should they be in there? They certainly tried not to this time, but there's pros and cons. And what about preparation time? I really hate it when the whole squad doesn't arrive together, when they have training with some of the squad and warm-up matches with some of the squad, and then the rest come and it's all a bit rushed. It was appalling for the first game in New Zealand. We had preparation for the Japan game without the full squad. Should they just make it shorter and start when the full squad is available? Of course, you have that conflict between the Lions and the countries and the domestic sides, but what would you do about that? Or would you have even more radical changes and change some massive things about the Lions tour? You know, would you just say just a test series, maybe one warm-up and just the test series and keep it at that? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's go back to these stats. Now, I just put this up for comparison of what they've tried in the past alongside squad size. How big should you take? Now, for me, I'd like to see a small squad go, so it really is the best of the best. Personally, I'd like a smaller squad and less matches, but then, of course, That doesn't make much money for the Lions, and it doesn't make as much money for these host nations who really rely on it for a big boost of income. So maybe that's unrealistic. Now, as a comparison, look at the non-professional era. We've got 1974 on the screen there. That's the classic side, the undefeated tour, Willie John McBride, Gareth Edwards, etc. Amazing side. Only took 30 players, played 22 matches in total, including 4 test matches. You couldn't do that these days with the physical demands that are on it, but amazing for them. But then we go into the professional era, starting with 1997, which was just getting into professionalism. They played 13 matches, took a smallish side of 35 players. Then we see the squad size start to increase, maxing out at 44 for New Zealand when Clive Woodward took them. They did play 12 matches, and they did have 2 midweek games in the test matches as well, which is maybe part of the reason he took the controversial decision to split the squads. And indeed, I saw Gatland even considered maybe that is a way to do it again. Hopefully not, but anyway. And we see also some have warm-up games. For example, this year had a warm-up game. Australia had that terrible warm-up game in the humidity. Some had 1 midweek match between the tests. Some had 2. This time they had none. Which way round would you do it? What ideal squad size would you have? Would you have a warm-up? How many domestic sides would you play, or non-test games would you play? And then in total, how many matches, etc. So I'd love to know your thoughts below. What should they go with when we go to Australia next time? Should we change things radically or just tweak it? Pop it below, and I'll catch you next time.